Welcome to Self-Made Dad, a show where we talk about and challenge all the notions of fatherhood and manhood that may be holding us back from being the best fathers we can be. One of the things that came to mind this week was an experience that I know I had when I was a kid, where I would say things like, I was scared how you'd react to me telling you this. Does that sound familiar to you? I have seen that a lot of people's partners, like their wives, co-parents, don't feel comfortable fully expressing what's going on with them to the father, to the man. And I see this is true of fathers as well to their kids. Like a lot of times kids get older and they don't feel comfortable or confident communicating what's really going on to their parents, in particular their fathers. Why is that? Why are we as fathers creating these environments that make our kids and our partners feel unsafe to communicate what they need or what they're feeling to us? That's what I want to dig into today here. That's what I really want to talk about. Because I don't think that's what y'all want. It's not what I want. I have a vision for my 40 years from now that my daughter and my son feel so able to communicate with me that they will text me random stuff throughout the day. Hey, this happened to me. Just wanted to share with you, Papa. That's what I want, right? But that doesn't come overnight. It's not easy. That requires some actual work in creating a consistent experience of safety so that those kids can be vulnerable. And it's clear how it can start with the partnership. So what I want to cover today is a little bit about marriage, and it's a little bit about parenthood and fatherhood. So how does this present itself, right? Like, what are some examples of parents and co-parents and wives not feeling safe to communicate? If you saw my polls this week, I asked, what is something that you want to tell your partner, your husband, the father of your children, that you don't feel like you can? And I got a range of stuff, ranging from critical stuff like, hey, I want you to be around more often, or can you stop being so mean in front of the kids so that they don't see us and our drama, all the way to really, really complimentary stuff like, I see how hard you're working to put food on our table and we appreciate it. Now, I don't know about you, but I wish my wife would say that to me. And candidly, she does. But a lot of y'all's wives aren't saying that. How much more so are there things going on with your kids that they're not able to bring to you because they're fearful of how you'd react, or they're not sure that it's something they should talk to you about? That is 100% in control of us, the fathers, right? Like the things that happen that present this environment where these kids and our partners don't feel confident in sharing what's going on with them. It's all of the stuff that we do. The obvious stuff is like a lot of times guys feel the desire to solve problems out of the gate, right? So your wife or your kid may bring an issue to you like, oh, I really feel like I have this difficult situation at school or at work. I really hope that my family member, like my mom or whatever, can help with this. And we jump in to try to solve it out of the gate, right? Like I know y'all relate to that because it's just how we are. I'm that way too. That can feel like you're not listening, right? Facial tics. I mentioned in a previous show that I have like a resting angry face. Like for those watching on the video, it's kind of like this. Like that's just how I am normally. And I know that if I am presenting anger or frustration or, some kind of judgment through my facial expressions to my wife and my kids, then they're going to feel some kind of way and not necessarily share everything that's going on with them. I've seen it with my daughter where she'll be articulating something that happened at school and I'll have a reaction to it and I won't say anything, but I'll react and then she'll stop. She'll stop talking. I know y'all have probably seen that with your kids if you have them, and you might have seen that with your wife too. Those are just some of the things that create an environment that make people, not just women, not just kids, but people feel unsafe to share, right? And it's something that is just building on the discussion about community last week. It's something that we as men sometimes unintentionally inflict on each other and then create spaces of no safety for us to discuss things with each other. Because, you might be sharing something with a buddy of yours that you're having this struggle with your wife or in your marriage or something, and they jump straight into problem solving or telling you about yourself or whatever. And you're like, look, man, I just really wanted to get this off my chest. I don't need your opinion, frankly, because like you're on your third marriage. I don't really want your opinion. But those things create environments where the next time you don't really open up. The next time you don't feel safe bringing that thing to the person. And so if you are putting your family in that position where they feel unsafe to share what's honestly and genuinely going on with them, then you will never have the opportunity to actually speak into them and help them grow. A lot of us fathers really want to be a strategic advisor to our kids, right? Whether it's, hey, how do you think about hitting this ball or shooting this jump shot or leaping on stage, to career decisions, interview tactics, investment decisions. And in a lot of cases, because that stuff is in general emotionally low stakes, kids might bring it to you, right? But I'll be honest, I didn't bring any of that to my parents. In particular, I never brought it to my dad. Why? Because I never trusted how he was going to react to anything that I was unsure about or that didn't align with what he thought needed to be done. So, for example, when I decided to go off and launch one of my first entrepreneurial ventures, I talked to my father about it. And this was when I was like in my late 20s, early 30s, something like that. And I just really was telling him just to tell him. I didn't need his opinion. I didn't need any money. I didn't need any support. I was just, look, man, this is what's going on in my life. And I extended myself a little bit there. And the first thing out of his mouth was him being angry and confused and disappointed. And it wasn't about me, to be clear. It was because he was scared for me. He was worried for me. And that presented itself as fear, as resistance, as disappointment in me. And that held me up in making some decisions and frankly told me, I don't feel like he's the right person to share this kind of stuff with. And there have been dozens, if not hundreds of moments in my life that as a father now, I wish that my son or my daughter would have shared with me, but I didn't share it with my father because I just didn't really feel comfortable with him doing that. And it was because of him. So that responsibility is on us, right? Like it's our responsibility to create an environment of safety in which our partners and our kids can bring whatever to us, right? And the stakes are actually really, really, really high, right? Think about the future for those of you that have kids, right? Think about your kid being 15, 20, and making decisions about partnership with a person that may lead to long-term partnership and togetherness, right? Like I know I thought I was ready to get married when I was like 15 or 16. I was just like, I love this person so much. It was really, really high amounts of conviction. Now, let's say that they don't feel comfortable having that discussion with you or even bringing that person around. You don't know what could happen there, right? That person could be a 35-year-old person trying to traffic them. They could be a person in college trying to take advantage of them for a college prank. Or they could just be like some real weirdo that really doesn't fit with them and could hold them back from being their biggest and most awesome self. But because you don't have access to that part of their life, because they don't feel safe bringing it to you, you can't work on it, right? You can't give them advice. Or conversely, right, in your marriage, in your partnership, right, you might be in a situation where your partner is feeling frustrated about something. It might be something small like like not picking your clothes up off the floor. I'll speak for myself. That can fester, right? That can build resentment. But because your partner doesn't feel safe mentioning it to you, because every time she tries to give you feedback or just ask you to do something, you react with anger, you react with criticality, you shift the discussion to something she's not doing wrong and try to tit for tat with it, she doesn't bring it up anymore. And what might start as frustration about things like clothes on the floor might build to, oh, I'm frustrated that you maybe don't do something as well as I'd like you to do about making money or protecting the family or whatever. And that then escalates to, oh, Bill at work makes me feel safe in these ways. I'm going to talk to Bill, which escalates to maybe a rendezvous with Bill, all because you couldn't make it feel safe for them to come to you with whatever was on their mind, right? I just make that point to say it is really critical. And frankly, like as men in the household who often and for good reason are associated with the forcefulness in the household and the tone setting in the household, the responsibility is on us to set the tone and provide that safety, right? So I see one of my good friends from way back in the day, I mean like 25 years plus, made a comment in the chat that as parents, we always feel like we want to try to jump in and solve the problem. And that's true. I agree with that. That's in particular a guy's thing to do. That's a dad thing to do in particular. I know sometimes I get caught up in it. I'll be talking to a buddy and they'll be presenting a problem to me, and all I can think about is like, oh, here's how, like, where I think you messed up. Here's a way that I would suggest solving it. Here's like probably what they're thinking, and you need to listen to that, blah, blah, blah. And I start thinking in strategic advisory. That's a really important point because that's valuable, right? Like for those of us who are really good at that, problem solving, like facing down challenges and handling them, that's great. That's a necessary, useful tool. It's a great part of your personality. But I use the word tool intentionally because it should be a tool in the toolkit. Next to that tool should also be listening. And I created this concept. I don't know if it's a real thing. I just made it up as I was writing my notes, that I think that there are two kinds of listening and environment setting with your partner and your kids, right? There's a judgmental approach to listening where, to the commenter's point, you jump in because you immediately think that they are incapable of solving the problem themselves. So you need to step in and solve the problem. You need to give your opinion immediately, right? You have applied some judgment into the person and the situation, and now you have to insert yourself. That's one form of this. And another form of this is safe haven parenting in existence. And that's what I want to talk a little bit more about, right? What does a safe haven mean, right? Think about the concept of a safe haven. A safe haven is a place where you feel safe. Safety isn't necessarily always derived from external violence. Like, we've built these walls and we have such a great army that we are safe. That is part of it. But ultimately, the core of safety, in particular in relationships with your partners, your kids, or whoever, your friends, it means that I'm not likely to be harmed. I am free from harm in this environment, which begs the question, what causes harm, right? It's easy to say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. All of us know that, like, your parent can say something to you, or your partner can say something to you, or shit, your kids can say something to you that cuts you straight to the bone and it hurts like a mofo. So words can hurt. So what are ways that harm can be created? You can create harm by judging a person too soon, right? You can have your kid or your wife come to you and say, hey, like, I'm really frustrated with the situation at work. And then automatically you can say, hey, look, like, this is what you need to do. That's what you need to do. You know, you're not pulling your weight here, et cetera. And that's going to make them feel harmed because they're going to feel like you are accusing them of something. And also you're not listening. Another thing that can cause harm is, I'm going to say infantilism, but like treating people and grown adults, or even like older, like kids, as if they're incompetent babies. What does that mean? That means that you step in and tell them exactly what to do or what you think they should do in the situation. So, hey, like, oh, this situation at work, did you throw in 500 applications to a new job? Did you do this? Did you do that? Etc. Have you called these people? Oh, you need to tell this person exactly this. Here, I'm going to send you the email to send to them. All of those little things cause them to feel like you think they're incapable and incompetent. And so the next time they have a problem, they're not going to bring it to you because they're going to be like, look, I don't want to talk to dad because, like, dad's just going to tell me what he thinks I should do. And he's not going to actually, like, help me work out what I should do. He's not going to make me feel like he's even listening. He's not going to make me feel like that whenever things go wrong, I have him in my corner, which is like ultimately what we want, right? We want our kids and our wives and our friends to feel like we're on their team. That's what we mean to communicate by sharing all these thoughts, by sharing all the opinions and suggestions, is that, hey, I'm on your team. I'm so on your team that I think you should do this. Let me help you from the expertise I feel like I have, right? And that could be helpful, but in a lot of cases it's not, because it doesn't create an environment in which they feel safe from harm. You actually risk harming them because you apply and throw at them something that implies something about themselves. So what does an environment free from harm look like? Safe haven listening, right? That's what I called it. I don't know. I have people who are therapists and, you know, like masters and PhDs that listen to this show. So please just tell me what the right answer is. But I call it self-haven listening. And what does that mean? That means creating an environment in which the kids, your wife, your friends feel confident to bring something to you and to be able to be fully present and vulnerable such that they can feel heard, work out what they need to, and get from you whatever support they actually need. Said differently, this becomes not about you and what you think the person should do, but about what the person needs in the moment. Take your ego out of it and open your ears to listen. Here's an example of that. My daughter came to me recently. She was really upset about like getting hit in the head. She opened it with like so and so hit me in the head today at school, and obviously I like bristled and I was like, I'm ready to fight. I'm like, point him out. Which one of these kids needs to die today? That was my initial reaction, but like in my body. But what I said to her was like, okay, what happened? And she explained to me that they were playing like, oh man, there's some name of the game, but whatever. It was like dodgeball basically. And somebody chucked a ball and it just hit her in the head. And I was like, okay. And I asked her, this is key. How do you feel about that? And she said, I feel okay. I feel like I should have dodged it. And I was like, okay. Do you feel like you want me to help you with anything with that? Do you want to train to dodge better? Do you want to say something to this person? You want me to help you figure out how to say it? And she said, no, I just really wanted to, I wanted you to listen. I just wanted to tell you that. She went about her day. Now, walking through that story, there are like about 15 opportunities that I will say I naturally wanted to jump in and like talk about stuff. I was like, all right, cool. So I'm going to punch this kid in the head for hitting you in the head with a ball. We are going to train nonstop so that if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. You are now going to get on a fitness regimen so that you're a little more agile. And you're going to go tell that kid, like, if the next time that they hit you in the head with the ball, there's going to be consequences and repercussions, right? And all of that stuff would, as the person in the chat said, it makes them feel like they can't do and figure out things for themselves. Ultimately, like we want our kids to be independent. I had a dad tell me this week that one of the visions that he and his wife have for their kid is for them to be independent and autonomous by the time they get to college. And their concern was like, how do we get there? And my perspective, which reminds me I should probably tell them this, my perspective is it starts with all these little things, right? If you can help them feel independent and capable in the things that they're doing now, as small as something like dodgeball, then they should be able to develop themselves to make independent decisions like, what kind of career should I pursue? Should I go out tonight or should I study? Should I make this investment or should I buy bottle service at the club? They'll start to have the confidence in their ability to make decisions because you have given them the confidence that they can, right? And listen, they're not going to make all great decisions, right? One time, my daughter asked me, like she was struggling with reading at school and she mentioned it to me. And I was like, well, hey, do you want to do some practice? You know that practice makes proficient. So you've seen how it helps you practice reading before. Do you want to start trying that now? And she's like, no. And I had to bite my lips so hard because if I forced her to do it in that moment, it would take away her autonomy. It would imply to her, hey, you know what? Your ability to make decisions is trash. I'm making all your decisions for you. Now, did I bring it up again later? Sure. Did I also put things in her path that would help encourage her and incentivize her to start reading? Yeah. Oh yeah, like the story that I posted on Instagram today for the announcement, like you saw one of my kids in the sink, but in the background, my daughter is on the computer. She's actually playing a reading game that I just put in her path so that she would start playing with it. And now she's practicing reading without realizing it. But the most important thing, everybody, is that she felt safe enough to tell me something she was struggling with and then trust that I would just listen to her and help her with what she needed. And she just went away, right? But I then helped her without making her feel like I was choosing for her. Right? When your kids and when your partner can bring to you the things that are going on with them, you can help them. You can be there. You can support. You can invest in them. But if they don't even tell you, you have no chance. You have no opportunity to help them. Right? Same thing's true within marriage and like husbandry. Right? The predominating stereotype we love to say is like, oh, women want us to know everything about them. They want us to understand without them telling us. Well, first of all, I would argue that a lot of us guys don't tell our wives what's going on with us. That's a topic for a different conversation. But we just keep that to ourselves for a bunch of reasons. So the I don't know, the knife cuts both ways. I think that's a saying. Additionally, we don't ask. We don't listen. Actually, let me be clear. We don't listen to our wives when they do tell us what's going on with them. And those of us who have been married a long time and have done couples counseling and all that, you kind of understand this now. But one of the key lessons in that is learning how to listen, right? Your wife may say, oh man, like I really hate so-and-so down the block. And then you might say, all right, cool. I hear you say that you don't like so-and-so. And I take that to mean that you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, disrespected, whatever, anytime you're around so-and-so. Is that fair? And they may say, you know what? It's disrespected. Right. That woman always talks about my shoes every time I come around her. What does that tell me, right? If you listen, that tells you that so and so down the street disrespects your wife. So you have an obligation now to start protecting your wife as well. Like step in and make sure Miss So and so doesn't talk sideways to your wife. That also tells you that your wife is maybe feeling insecure about her shoes, or she just really loves getting compliments about her shoes. So guess what? You put that in your back pocket, and next time you need to put some credit in your account before you mess something up or you need to go out late with the boys, you can mention to your wife, I like them shoes you're wearing today. But if you don't listen, and if you don't create the environment in which it's safe for her to articulate these things to you, then you'll never hear it. And let's take it a step further, right? If you aren't willing to listen to feedback and critique from your wife or your friends, you will stagnate, right? And you could risk losing them. Your wife may right now be frustrated at you about something related to how you parent the kids, or related to something like how you're interacting with her. Maybe you haven't been telling her all of the times that you've planned to go out with the boys or spend time with, or like travel for yourself or whatever. And she feels like she's constantly getting surprised about it. That's solvable. But if she's not telling you that, then that can start to build resentment. What happens when people have resentment? Then they start getting angry and they start really building frustration and they separate and they close themselves off. And then, if you want to get really like internety about it, then they start to move into their quote unquote masculine frame, which whatever. I have thoughts on that. But ultimately, like you have put your partner in a position to be frustrated and angry at something you're doing. And regardless of why you're doing it, you have prevented them from communicating how they feel about it, so that you can deal with it and like maybe reframe it for them, right? Hey, baby, I'm traveling for work. These are really great trips for me with the boys. It helps me be a better father and a better husband. Don't you notice how refreshed I come back feeling, or whatever, and handle it and then settle things out. But instead, you just let it kind of happen and then it festers. And then now you're like separated, like just because you couldn't take feedback and criticism. And look, I'm not gonna lie, man. Like we all do stuff like this. My wife and I have done a bunch of couples counseling. It's really taught me a lot about listening, in particular with my kids. Now I am actively trying to be mindful of how I show up to them, because I have a vision of them in 40 years still communicating with me in full scope of what's going on in their lives. And so I need to foster an environment where they feel comfortable sharing with me now, so that carries on into the future. But I'm not perfect. I mean, look, like my parents, particularly my dad, modeled judgmental listening, right? And anytime I would tell him anything, he would just like have some thoughts about it. He would have probably some disrespect about it. And I wasn't really into it. So I just stopped talking to him. And that hamstrung me, because I'm now a self-made dad, in that I had to teach myself a ton of stuff. Granted, a lot of the world that I live in now, he couldn't have taught me things, but there's like basic things about relationships, family planning, just like life, race relations that he could have taught me. But because I didn't want to bring to him the first time that I got called the N-word, or the first kiss I had, or like this plan I had to ask my wife to marry me, I never got input from him. And I had to figure that shit out on my own. It's not surprising. Like, I would ask you to look at your relationship with your parents and see how much judgmental, reactive listening they do with you, and see if you can draw a line to how you engage with your partners and your kids. Because I'm pretty sure there's a strong line. We are products of our upbringing as much as we are genetics. So like, I sneeze like my dad because of genetics. I am very cheap because of my dad, because of how he raised me. So we're a function of our parents, right? And so I know that like that's the model we have in our head, but we have to think about new ways of approaching this. If you want your kids to be seeing you as a counselor over their lifetime, right? So here's some suggestions, right? Like I got some thoughts. This is what's worked for me. Take them or leave them. Also, if you got other ideas, I'd love to hear them in the chat or later. DM me or text me or whatever. Suggestion number 1, whenever I'm listening to my wife, or in particular my daughter, and I talk about her a lot because she's old enough to have these conversations, but also she's a girl, and the world will create an environment in which they will communicate that her opinions and feelings about things matter less, right? So I'm very focused on helping her get in touch with her confidence. So whenever she or my wife brings something to me, first thing I ask is like, okay, how do you feel about it? My daughter may say like, look at this cool thing I did. Do you like it? And I won't answer that. I will say, how do you feel about it? My wife may be venting a frustration about something going on, or she'll tell me she's stuck on something, and I'll say, okay, how do you feel about it? And that allows her, and her in plural, them, to feel heard, to hear that I am really focusing and caring about what they think, and give them a chance to see, like, actually, what do they feel in this situation? And they might feel okay about it and recognize that there's some overarching factor that contributed to it. And then, I don't know, I don't need to say anything. They might feel really sad and grieving about it. And then that opens a door for me to see, like, how can I help you grieve this? Is there anything I can do? Do you want me to go get ice cream? Do you want me to go punch that person in the face? What is helpful? But it allows them to drive, right? Like, I'm allowing them to feel safe to bring whatever they need to me, and know that I will check in with them first to see what feelings this is creating, what emotional state they're in before I act. So that's one. Number two, ask for input, get buy-in, right? Get consent. That was the term I was looking for. Get consent from the person. So I'll use a very basic example. One of my buddies is also a show creator, and I was listening to his show for a long period of time. And he asked me one time, he's like, oh man, like, what do you think of the show? And I said, hey, what kind of feedback are you looking for? Are you looking for this kind of feedback or that kind of feedback? I just want to make sure I'm giving you what you're looking for. And he said, oh, I'm looking for this kind of feedback. Thanks. Because if you give me that kind of feedback, it's just going to send me into a doom loop. So I appreciate you like asking and getting clear and then looking for consent. Great. And I think that's important because as a person, like even with the show, right? Like I have some people that will say, oh, like this is great. Or, oh man, this thing you said really sucked. Or they'll give me commentary on the background or the video quality or my tone or whatever, all unsolicited. And listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. There is nobody more critical or more aware of the deficiencies of things I'm doing than me. I have a high amount of confidence, right? Like my wife will tell you that I'm never lacking in confidence of doing things, but I'm also very, very highly self-critical. Like I know when I'm missing a period in a sentence. I know how many filler words I've used in this show today. I think I've used probably about 7. So like I'm aware, there goes another one. And I'm very aware of shortcomings because I have a very clear vision of what I want perfect to look like. So I don't need that input. What I need is help redirecting to the positive. So getting consent is really helpful. So much so it's true with kids and with partners. Your wife may bring something to you and she might not want your input. So if you ask, hey, is it helpful for me to give you some perspective or thoughts or take this over from you? She may say no, and you need to be able to step back. She also may say yes because she's tired. But if you give her the choice, number one, you have given her agency. You've acknowledged that she is a person and that you respect her opinion. And also, then you have said, whatever you need, I will do, right? It may be, I don't need you to do anything. Cool, I won't do anything. It may be, I need you to do all this other stuff. Great, I'll do that. But you have made it clear that this is a partnership, not you forcing yourself and your thoughts and opinions onto that person. And just imagine as a kid, when you don't even really know agency, like you can get conditioned to just like listening to whatever anybody tells you. And for all of those folks who are like, oh, you know, sheeple this and sheeple that, that's how you make a sheeple, right? Is by taking away their ability to think for themselves and decide for themselves. Now, look, I'm not sitting here advocating that you let your kids like do whatever they want. But what I'm saying is give them opportunities to make decisions about how you interact with them and what they need. And they may mess it up in the beginning and you need to help guide them back towards what does work. But you got to let them do that so that they can understand the responsibility of making decisions and what it feels like to have someone who allows them to make decisions. Because once they're on the real world, that's what they're going to be doing. Or they're just going to be like working at a place that tells them to push the button and pull the lever from 9 to 5 and clock in and clock out. You know, like they're not going to have control over their lives. So that's number 2. Ask for consent on the input and what they want. Last thing, you got to model it. You got to show them how to do it, man. And so like, this is just a statement to all the men out there that are like, oh, you know, like I don't need to be emotional. The world is trying to get men to be too emotional. Listen, this is a perfect example of why we need to connect with and be aware of our own internal emotions, because we're trying to develop kids to master their own. And these kids' emotions, they don't know what they're feeling. They may see like, they may break their Lego set and then think the entire world has ended and then get into depression. And like, yeah, like that might seem massively terrible in the microcosm of their world, but if they don't know how to pull themselves out of that, when they go out into this real world, the first time they get fired from a job, and look, like everybody's been fired from something. The first time they get fired from a job, they're going to crash and burn because they never learned how to manage their emotions because they never saw you do it. They might only know how to be angry, or they may only know how to not show emotion because that is quote unquote strength. And then they wallow in depression and play video games all day and don't send in applications. And then you pay their rent. And more importantly, they don't know how to get themselves out of that pit of despair. And look, like I'm going to put a caveat here. I have a few close friends who are dealing with depression and real mental issues. So I'm not sitting here acting like this is an end all be all. Like, but again, like if you, father, aren't even aware of what these emotional states feel like and can engage with it, you can't see in your kid when it goes beyond, hey, they're just dealing with some feelings issues and need to process it, and into real psychological, scientific, clinical mental health issues. So model it. Show them, hey, like this is how I'm feeling about the situation. Today, I lost an account and that made me really sad and I'm grieving it and I'm kind of mad at myself because I didn't do this, and this. And then let your kid ask you questions and answer them. Or if they just create an environment that feels safe, then just say thank you for that, right? Because kids learn watching you more than what you tell them. So it's like you got to model this stuff. And if you can't master yourself in communicating and being vulnerable, then you can't expect your kid to be doing that back. And I do it with my own kid. Like I try to tell her, I try to make a point every day. I don't do this consistently. That's not fair. I don't do it every day, but I do it most days where I will say to her, hey, here's how my day went. I was really excited about this today. I was really disappointed about that today. Here's how I'm feeling in general. This thing is stressing me out. I share that with her. She's strong enough to learn this stuff. It's not like this scares her, but she also understands that there's a range. So now she comes to me and communicates things. Like, here's an example. And this is, I'll only close on this point. My daughter has come to me recently and was like, Papa, can I tell you something? So-and-so happened and I felt really embarrassed about it. And I could work with her on that. She also told me, Papa, I was working on this thing at school and it didn't go the way I wanted. And I'm very disappointed about that. And we could work on that. Or she could tell me, and this goes to the example of the dodgeball thing, but she could tell me like she got hit by somebody today and I could deal with it, right? There thankfully hasn't been a time where she's like been bullied or anything, but she had told me about situations with her and her best friend where the best friend's like towing the line and things that I think are disrespectful. And instead of me judging and reacting, I talked to my daughter and said, hey, why don't you try saying this next time? And she's done it and come back to me and told me how it went. Told me that she feels proud of standing up for herself. But I wouldn't have been able to show her how to stand up for herself if she didn't feel comfortable bringing something to me that she didn't feel good about. And so that is what I think you all want for yourselves, is that cycle over time of your kids, your wives, being able to bring things to you, feeling safe to talk about it, being in a headspace to receive feedback from you if they want it, so they can act on it. And then coming back and saying thank you. Because once you do that, then not to use an overly emotional word, but that's intimacy, right? That is real connection. But most importantly, that's what helps your family be successful and benefit from the unique experiences and knowledge you have. So create a space of safety, right? Start within and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And then set the tone in the house that we are all on the same team. And anything you bring to me in this, I will not judge you for it. I will listen to you. I will see your emotions, and I will engage with you in a way that is appropriate for the situation and state of mind you're in right now. That's your job as a parent, right? And that's your job as a father, because we naturally will be the protector, the provider. I've said it a million times before, God forbid there is any kind of wild animal near my kids. Like if there's a dog that I think is even close to out of pocket, that dog will not be around my kid for much longer. So I'm with you. I'm here for all of that. But in addition to that, they need to not only feel physically safe, but emotionally safe. And that starts with you, Father. That starts with you. That's a show for today. I would love feedback, comments. Share this with people that you think need to hear it. Thank you to all the wives who submitted thoughts about things that they wish they could have said to their husbands. Hopefully, this provides a talk and some context for you husbands, for you fathers, to understand what's at stake if you don't create this environment of safety for your family in the house. So looking forward to feedback and chats. Peace.